What's up, homies? Josh here at Modern Frontiersman. So, as you can see, what I got in front of you here today is some leather pants that I have. I wear these hunting. I like to do a lot of like traditional hunting with black powder, and I'll wear buckskin. This is actually suede, but I got my old school like flop hat, like they would have wore back in the 1700s, all the way into the 1800s. But I'll wear these pants. I'll carry my black powder rifle. I got the good old black powder pistol. But I was looking at these pants and I was making a bag yesterday, and I thought to myself, it's like I bet people wonder about Fringe. Um, if you want to know how this is made, well, this is the video for you. How is Fringe put into things? How is it made? It's quite simple. But sometimes it's the simple things that nobody explains because they assume that people already know how to do it. So if you're wanting to do leather work and you're wanting to put fringe on something like we have on these pants, well, this is a video. I'm going to break it down plain and simple like always. Stuff is far less complicated than people want to make it out to be, kind of gatekeeping information or making it seem like things are so much harder than they really are. So I'm working on a bag right here. It's going to be a belt pouch. As you can see, got the traditional like beaver tail shaped, the beaver tail flap over here. Interesting thing is a lot of bags back in the 17 and early 1800s that long hunters or mountain men would carry actually had no sort of fastener on them. They would just have maybe lace around, or say you could put like a concho or something on, and it would just kind of weigh that flap down, and it didn't. There was no closure on it. But that's besides the point. Just a little historical side note there. So I want to put some fringe on the bottom of this bag. Okay. Why? Just because it looks cool? No. Um, just like these pants. Some people don't know that fringe actually has a purpose. The idea behind fringe is that if the leather gets soaked, then this fringe that is stitched into the seam will soak that water into the fringe. It'll run down each piece and then drip out. So it's really to soak up water from the main body of whatever that fringe is on. Let me tell you, if you ever buy clothing like this, it's super warm. I don't wear these until it's like really cold. So how would I put fringe on this bag? Quite simple. So I have a chunk of the same leather right here. You could use buckskin, whatever. And what I'll do is, so here's the front of the bag. I want it to just be kind of in the center, and I'm going to actually cut it down to like a V shaped, which will actually, bring all that water down in theory, and it'll drip out the ends. So no need to be very specific on measurements here. So I'll just put it out here. I don't really want to mess with stitching it around the corner, so I'm just going to put it right on the bottom where water would run down to. So you can use a ruler to get everything nice and straight if you want with this. I don't bother because it's fringe. It's going to be all, stringy anyway. It doesn't need to be perfect. So don't worry about it. Don't even bother using a ruler or measuring or anything. You don't need to with this. Okay, so I won't go more. I know my hand is about in between 7-8 inches. I don't ever really want to go longer than that. And as you can see, this fringe is about that length too. It's about the length of my hand. Why? Because if you go much longer, the fringe just gets caught up in briars and things like that when you're out in the woods. So if you're going to put fringe on anything, keep it minimal. You don't want a whole big bunch on there, whether it's on a holster, on clothing, on a bag. Just keep it not too crazy long. Okay, so I cut me out a little rectangle piece. So it's going to get stitched in the bag, right? Here's the top, here's the bottom. And what we would do is this piece of leather would be stitched inside of here like this. But first, so I'm going to mark where I would stitch the piece in, mark a stitching line. And most people, unless you're doing fine leather work, which I usually use a chisel where it makes very tiny holes and use much thinner, finer thread. But most people are going to be using a punch like this. Doesn't really matter. Either way, the process is the same. So this is my stitching line where all these holes will be punched along the top here. So what I'll do is I'll go a little bit below. I'll start a little bit below the stitching line, maybe about here. And I'll just start cutting. I'll start cutting this into strips. Go over a little bit. Like I said, you can use a ruler. A lot of people do because they want to get it nice and perfect, but really doesn't matter. And if you want to shape it down like I'm going to do, like into like a, come down into a point in the center, you could just go ahead and cut it into that shape, into like a triangle shape. Sometimes I'll just do the I'll cut the pieces of fringe out first, and then I'll cut it down like that so I can, you know, really trim it custom to how I want it. But it doesn't really matter. You can keep it straight or do it stylized like this. So basically you just cutting all these strips. Don't cut all the way up into your where your stitching line is going to be, because you need this space. You need this space here where we put the stitching line to stitch, you know, to punch your holes for stitching. So just keep cutting it down into strips. See, it's not complicated. I said, once again, if you want it perfect, then go for it. Make it perfect and use a ruler. And but it's no need, guys. Now it'll look kind of wonky if you start, you know, if you're not somewhat careful and you get a bunch of some big pieces and then some real skinny pieces, and so, you know, keep them somewhat the same width. Say I cut that one a little bit short, but that's okay. It's all right. Say I don't even like for this old school woodsman stuff. I don't like for it to be perfect. I kind of like for it to look like some trapper who was out in the mountains just made it from hides that he caught and put himself something together. Because, you know, a lot of times that's how it goes. That's how it went. And even today, there's a lot of you out there making your own gear, which I love it. That's how I got started in leatherwork. So you can see, now we've cut that all down into little strips. So a lot of times what I'll do, because it'll be kind of stiff if you're using cowhide like this, I'll just kind of wad it up. So once you put it in there, just kind of work it and kind of break that leather in. Make it a little more loose and fringy. You see? We got one big wide piece here at the bottom. I'm going to cut that one off. So there's our fringe for the bag. See, this fringe on here is a bit wider, but it doesn't matter. See, I like to cut my fringe a little thinner, kind of like hairs, you know what I mean? So then what we'll do, so being that these bags, I'll stitch them inside out. You could just stitch it in there straight like this. Just put it in there in between these pieces. If you want to glue it, you can glue it. Glue it all down and then glue that in there and then stitch it up. But what I do with these bags, if you stitch them flat like this, you know, then you have just a kind of a flat bag. But stitch them inside out, just like purses and things are made. And then I'll put the fringe in. If you do it like that, you have to put the fringe in upside down, facing up, and then stitch it together. Oh, excuse me. Inside out, then stitch it together. Then when you flip the bag, after you've stitched up the sides and you pull the bag inside out, that fringe will pop out the bottom like so, and it'll be stitched into that seam. But that's all there is to it, guys. It's all there is to making fringe. So then you would just, like I said, if you glued everything together, then you could just go around with your hole punch. What I tend to do with these bags is I'll just go ahead and punch my holes across the fringe, punch my holes around the bag, and then just stick that in there as I'm stitching and go through those holes already punched. Unless that is if I'm using one of these. Now, if I glue it all together and everything, then I'll punch all the holes at one time with this, and I'll go ahead and glue the fringe in there before I start punching holes. But that's all there is to it. There's the fringe. And when the bag is done, it'll be less squared on the bottom. It's more kind of, once it's flipped inside out, it ends up more like more round shape. And this fringe be sticking out the bottom. Now, if you want this is going to be a belt pouch. So I'll put belt loops on the back. If you want one of these pouches for a hunting bag, you know, for an ammo bag to wear on your belt, or to put a fire kit, or, you know, if you're like an herbalist and you're into collecting wild herbs and things like that, it's good for things like this. You can head over to modernfrontiersman.com, where I'm going to have these bags for sale on there. They're not on the website at this moment, but I'm going to be putting them on there right now. If you're curious about the size, it's about the size of my hand. Once it's flipped inside out, it's enough to get your hand down in. So it's enough to carry, you know, some caps and balls, or, you know, even shotgun shells, or, you know, I don't know, you name it. You could fit a squirrel in there if you killed a squirrel. It's just about a hand-sized pouch, big enough to carry, like I say, a small kit for something, or some ammo, and things like this. So a lot of times I'll wear one of these on my belt, and then I'll have my actual like haversack or my possibles bag around a bigger version of this same bag, just maybe about twice that size, over my shoulder. And I'll actually always carry one of those bags out camping. I've been camping before where that's literally, I had one of these on my belt. I had a tomahawk and a knife. I had my revolver, and I had a haversack. And that was it. That's all it took camping for like 3 days. I fit everything I needed in those things. Well, I had a bedroll, which I just put a rope through the middle of it and wore it around my shoulders. No backpack, nothing. I was out for like 3 days with everything I needed just in that. Collected most of what we were eating and using out in the forest. So, yep, that's how you make fringe. And if you want one of these bags, like I said, head over to modernfrontiersman.com, and I'll be happy to make you one. Until next time, stay self-reliant.